I'm going to start by sharing some of the different ways to navigate the site. So if you were to click on this button back to CRP Home, we actually have a separate Chicago Recovery Plan microsite at chicago.gov that has a number of other resources, including a spending dashboard. And you can use that site to navigate to this transparency site as well. On that note, one thing I do want to clarify about the purpose of the site is the purpose is to share data on our program activities and impact. Financial data, data on spending is shared on that other dashboard, as I mentioned earlier. The overview tab here is the page that we're currently on that I'll show you more of in a moment. We have a priority areas drop-down menu. On the previous slide, I shared how we have 13 different priority areas. We'll see what those pages look like a little bit later in the demo. We have a methodology page that provides some detail about how the data was compiled, how the chart should be interpreted, and some additional information that may be helpful. We have a resident served page, and that's a summary of demographic data on residents served across programs. We have a program drop-down menu. As Hannah mentioned earlier, if you know you're interested in, for example, our Chicago Resilient Communities Cash Assistance Pilot, you can navigate easily right to that program. If you would prefer to navigate through a geographic pathway, you can use our geographies drop-down menu to go to one of these 4 different types of geography: community areas, wards, zip codes, and police districts. So I'm going to start by showing what our homepage, our overview page looks like. At the top of the screen, we're summarizing across all of the CRP programs with data published on the site, the number of sites created, the number of community areas impacted, which is already all 77, and the number of residents served by the programs that have published data on the site, which at this point in time is over 72,000. Next, we have a map showing all 77 community areas in Chicago, shaded according to their COVID-19 vulnerability and their economic hardship levels. This is an interactive map. When you hover over a community area, you can see the number of active programs and the number of active program sites in each community area. Below the map, we have more information about those 13 priority areas. So if you were to navigate to the homepage and keep scrolling, you'd have easy access to both of these 2 main pathways. I like to call them the geographic pathway to explore the site and a thematic pathway to explore the site through all of our priority areas. But I'm going to start with that geographic pathway. So when you're scrolling over this map, you can double click on a community area. We'll choose Austin, and that will take you to a summary page for the Austin community area. The information that was displayed in the pop-up for that community area is shown at the top of this page. And then, very importantly, we have information about each and every program published on the site that is active in that geography. And you can see that table right here with information about those programs. As you might have seen as I was scrolling over, as you move between rows, between programs, different points on the map to the right are highlighted. So we can highlight our community development program, for example, and you can see that will highlight those points so that you can then scroll over and get more information through the pop-up for that point on those specific investments. So what I've hovered over right here is our Aspire Pop Fit. That's a public outdoor plaza that is already open to the public in the Austin community area. You can do that for all of our place-based investments shown here. Another feature that we're very excited about is right underneath the map, there's this nearby geography section. This is going to display any geographies that either intersect with the geography you're looking at, in this case, Austin, or are adjacent to that geography. So for example, these are all the wards that either are adjacent to or intersect with Austin. So we'll navigate to the 24th ward. You can see a very similar page here to what we just saw for the Austin community area, showing all of these projects. But in this case, of course, for a ward geography rather than a community area geography. So navigating back to our community area page, scrolling a little bit further down on that page, every geography has a demographic profile. And this displays 3 different types of demographic information for the geography you're viewing, as well as for the city overall: race and ethnicity data, data on age, and on household income. And for each of these charts, the dark green is showing that data point for the geography you're looking at, again, in this case, Austin, whereas the lighter green is showing the comparison data point for the city of Chicago overall. So that is a summary of what our geography pages look like. Again, you can see these kinds of information for not just community areas, but also wards, police districts, and zip codes. So the next thing I'd like to share, you may have noticed on this table here that some of our investments are place-based. There's a specific address associated, whereas there are others that are more people-focused. So you can actually use these buttons down here to go back and forth between different pages of the table. We have so many programs active in this community area that they don't all fit on one page view. You have to tab through. And a good example is our Chicago Resilient Communities Cash Assistance pilot that we mentioned before. You can see here that there are 338 recipients of cash assistance through that pilot program in the Austin community area. We aren't, of course, going to share personal identifying information about those participants. They won't show up as points on a map. But if you're interested in how that program is active across the city, you can click on the program name, and that will navigate you directly to a specific program page for this program. At the top of the page is summary text about the program that you're viewing. And then below that is a data visual, a map showing the number of cash payment recipients by community area across the city. Also very important is that this data you can visualize in two different ways. It defaults to community area. It's also an interactive map, but you can also select ward. And now you're seeing data for the same program on the ward level, also with an interactive map. So that's one way to thematically navigate through the site. I mentioned before that we can also navigate through our priority areas. So I went to our priority areas drop-down menu. I'm going to navigate to our affordable housing priority area page. You can see we have information about the objective of each priority area, as well as some recent updates and up next information. This is a way for departments operating these programs to publish milestones to provide more context on what these programs are doing and to allow residents to track their progress. Scrolling down further, we have a testimonial and an image, a rendering of one of the housing developments that will be built with CRP funding. And finally, very important, underneath that, we have a list of all the programs that are active and have data published on the site within this priority area. So you can see we have 3 programs here, and we have these thumbnail maps that are actually also interactive. These show you whether or not the program is active in a given geography, in this case, community areas. But we can click on the name of the program, and that will navigate us to a page like what we saw for the cash assistance pilot a couple pages ago. One thing I'd like to share here is that depending on the program, we have different types of data available. You can actually go back and forth between those types of data on the same page. So our first tab is called Sites. That refers to address level data. You can also navigate to the Summaries tab. So the difference here is, whereas the first map was showing specific addresses, this is showing the number of households participating in this program by community area. Again, this is an interactive map, so you can see information in the pop-ups as you scroll across the map, as well as information in this table on the right, which you can use this search box here to filter through columns in that site. So I think the last thing I'd like to share before wrapping up the demo is our resident serve page. So this is an important page because as I mentioned before, the Chicago Recovery Plan is fundamentally a pandemic emergency response set of investments. So we provided some information on this page about the disproportionate impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on different populations in terms of total cases, hospitalizations, and deaths from COVID-19, as well as impacts on life expectancy for different demographic groups. Below, we have some summary information on residents served. So for programs, for our human services programs that are directly serving residents, programs that are collecting demographic information about participants in those programs, we've been able to aggregate all of that data and share it here. We're able to display the race and ethnicity of residents served in these programs, as well as the age of residents served in these programs. You can see that these data visualizations mirror the other data visualizations that we presented on our geography pages of the site. And they show both the demographic information for residents served, as well as the comparison data point for the city of Chicago overall. And underneath each of those data visualizations is a list of the specific programs that are reflected in those data visualizations. Again, that's not every single CIP program, because not all CRP programs are human services programs. And also not every single program has this data published on the site. So this is a great way to see, to get an overview of who these programs are serving, but also be able to see specifically which programs are being referenced.